We've given 5 minutes for the other sessions to finish. I believe they have. There might still be a few people. I just wanted to ask you if you'd like to sort of come up to the front a bit more. The idea of this session is it's, I hope at least, is going to end up as a conversation rather than us just giving a talk, simply because we want to exchange ideas. This was our way of trying to find out what other people are doing, and I hope maybe that you can find out what others are doing as well. I'm Andrew Cheetham. I work at the University of Western Sydney, and I've got a small team with me, in fact the entire team. It's a small team of 3 plus me. However, of course, there are also people who work in information technology services and in the library who are, of course, concerned with eResearch. So what I wanted to do with this session was really to share experiences and exchange ideas. The last session was experienced and established universities telling you how to join up the dots. What we're here to do, perhaps we should have gone first, is to actually put the dots in place so that we can join them. So we're a bit the wrong way around, but nevertheless. So we want to share some ideas, show you what we've done to date, and then I hope that others can tell us how they have worked it. We've got a series of seed questions for you, and I think they were in the abstract, so you know what they are, but I'll put them up on the screen anyway. So we initiated this session, so I guess we'd better tell you what we've done, but I don't in any way wish to appear to be the sage telling you how to do it. We're going to tell you what we've done and what's worked, what hasn't, and what the benefits have been. Now, already I've got like 4 or 5 slides at the beginning, but most of this stuff has been presented already, so I'll whiz through it pretty quickly. The main things are why eResearch. We've talked about the data deluge. We've talked about the growth in data. Nobody's actually mentioned the democratization of data, which is an interesting one I heard elsewhere, in that if you are a small university, you can still get at ocean loads of data. If, for example, you work with ANSTO, you can access the OPAL data. If you work with the synchrotron, if you work with the astronomers, you can get at enormous amounts of data. You don't need to be a rich organisation in order to get at masses of data. That's what we mean by the democratization of data. Data mining is something that hasn't been talked about a lot, but of course this is one of the aspects of why we do research, in that you can get at data sets and even years after they've been produced and still mine them for valid conclusions. As I say, if you torture data sufficiently, it will confess to almost anything. And finally, then down the bottom there is the efficiency issue, and of course collaboration, which perhaps should be up the top in capital letters. The drivers for change have been discussed. I've got a list here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but basically you've got globally relevant and complex problems. These are technical, they're economic, they're climate-based, they're social, and they're even cultural. And these are complex problems and require masses of international collaboration. The other one that I wanted to look at in particular, as I say, I'm not going to read them all out, is the generation material. Then, these are in hourly divisions. Then there were 46 in the next hour, 34 in the next hour, 4 during lunch, 26 in the hour after that, and so far in the next hour there were about 20. So clearly we can use Twitter. We don't have to wait for the next generation. The government recognition is something, the last point I put down there. We know that there is recognition of what's happening. Government is funding what they call projects, and we have now the infrastructure roadmap, which includes a lot of commentary on how this has been working and how it should work. I'll get back to that later. In fact, I'll get back to it straight away. This is a slide that I've sort of pinched from, or sort of pinched from Nick Tate. I adapted it slightly. It's a map of what's happening, and what I've done is overlaid onto it the projects that the government has funded and is funding. The key issue here is coordination, and this has already been mentioned today, and the government has recognised it, particularly in the infrastructure roadmap. We put it on, well, not nearly every page, but the group that put the eResearch section together, which I was one, did emphasise this every time, because we have a big danger here. Just for example, the two current ones, RDSI and Nectar, they actually overlap considerably in certain areas, and yet the people working on them have got very tight timelines. They have to be quite focused on the timelines, the milestones, the spending of the money, and it's all very fast. The government wants to do this. I guess they want to get the money out the door before the next election, etc., etc. But if you're not careful, you get into a situation where you're concentrating so much on that. Talk about is that university executives who really don't quite understand the implications and why they should spend the money. It's well known, if there is no IT champion on an executive, any executive, not just universities, but if there is no IT champion, IT doesn't stand a chance because it will be perceived as a cost. You have to have somebody up there. Lack of long-term vision, lack of long-term funding. All of our funding is 3 years, as you know, and the vision isn't much further, and that's exemplified by the fact that our funding is 3 years, end of story. You have to provide the ongoing sustainability for all of these projects that we're doing. When I say you, I mean us. The involvement of IT shops in an unfamiliar area. Some of you will have an IT shop that actually is working with you very well. Others might find, oh no, we're just looking after the office machines. We don't do Windows, we don't do Macs, we don't do Linux, we don't do servers, etc., etc. Perhaps. Required learning and retraining. This is something we all have to do. Scholarly publishing industry. I'll just say Elsevier, and I guess you'll know what I mean. Privacy and IP issues is always brought up. These can be solved, but it is always brought up as a hurdle that we have to get over. And lack of a reward structure, I think, is important. We get rewarded for publications, not very much. The JRE is 10% driven by publications. The RTS is 10% driven by publications. Only 10%, but there's no driver for research data. There is, on the other hand, a compliance issue in our Code of Conduct for responsible research in Australia. We're supposed to have data management plans. We're supposed to put them in a repository. The NHMRC monitors that to an extent. The ARC doesn't, and also it's drawn back from that. You will see in the latest, in the last round for DP, Discovery Project, they have pulled back from insisting that data should be in a repository to suggesting that it would be a good idea. So there is no reward mechanism as yet. And then the culture change. So from here on, what I want to do now is, how am I doing for time? Is just tell you a bit about our experience. That's a sort of on the national scale. So what's happened at UWS? What initiated it and who drove it? Well, what happened was some time ago, I took up the reins of research, and eResearch is my little bag, if you like. I wrote my first computer program back in 1968, so you can call me a long-standing geek. But I also worked on an international project in the UK. Those of you who are from thereabouts might have heard of the JET project, the JET Joint Undertaking, Joint European Torus. It's a nuclear fusion energy project. I worked there from 85 to 90, and they had absolutely rigid data management plans. And you could not work outside that data plan. So we ran it. It was a pulsed machine. It would run a pulse, take 5 minutes. The actual pulse took a fraction of a second. And we would get an enormous amount of data, 20 megabytes. But remember that was 1985, and 20 megabytes was an entire hard disk on your PC. So it was a lot of data. These days it's considerably more. The machine is still running. That data was a pulse file. research team to the executive. So this is why is it important, what would happen if we don't do it, what are the benefits, and that delicate balance between compliance and benefit. I really didn't want to say we have to do this because otherwise we'll get beaten over the head by the federal government. Compliance isn't a good reason to do something. The benefit is a good reason, and compliance should be an after effect, an added effect, if you like. So we tried not to push the compliance barrow, rather more the benefit barrow, especially for students. This was approved, which was great, and immediately we joined Intersect. Now, some of you have been to a talk on Intersect, how Intersect operates. This has been a fantastic benefit. We got our on-site or on-campus, as they say, research analyst, Peter Bouchier down here, sorry. They didn't bite the fact that I said we've got 6 campuses, can we have 6 please? We only got 1, but he's been on every campus, so it works. We then recruited an eResearch manager, which is P.T. Sefton here, who's just started, a week ago? A week and a day, in fact. And we now have that small team, plus the expectation that we will be able to recruit more as the need arises. So we have to be quite rigorous in actually making sure that we log what we do, so that at a certain point we can say we need another person and can justify it with statistics. It's no good just being able to say, oh, we need another person. Again, university executives, when they're recruiting, tend to want that data, a good rationalisation why we need another person. At the same time, of course, we're linking into information technology services. So what's currently in place? We have the team of 3. I just talked about that. We're linked to the ITS service desk and to the UWS library team. We have implemented virtual environments. About 20 are installed since 2009, reaching about 175 users. We have a research data repository, which is a SAN, operating for about 8 months. We've got up to 68 terabytes, and a whole pile of bits of those have been allocated. We don't have free access, simply because we don't have enough. We know what would happen, and the last survey we did that I talked about showed that there was a great deal of demand. We're just putting it on hold at the moment. They can apply to us, but we don't have a well-defined process for doing it. That's something we need to discuss. Benefits to date are that we're linked into the Intersect network, and you get more than just your eResearch analyst, because Peter is linked into the whole of the Intersect network, so he can get advice from all of the other analysts. They meet once a week, I think. We have a high level of awareness of UWS researchers, to the extent that Intersect is running a survey at the moment, and so far we have the highest response rate of all the universities in New South Wales, which is pretty cool, but no doubt the others will catch up, maybe. We've got 2 ANS projects underway. We've got 2 Nectar virtual laboratory projects submitted. No doubt we're all involved in that little interesting exercise. Requests for data storage are coming to us in an informal sort of way, as opposed to when we discovered almost accidentally that one group needed 250 terabytes of storage. We're about to go to Dick Smith to buy 100 2-terabyte drives or something useful like that. We convinced them not to, and that's now on track. We have infrastructure savings by using virtual machines. I mentioned the virtual machines to you. The graph there is over time shows the number of users over the past year or so, and how that's growing. Actually, that generates significant infrastructure savings in that we intercepted, or at least one of my colleagues intercepted, 2 requests to one of the colleges for 2 16-core or 12-core, I remember, multiple core Macs. They wanted them under their desks so they could do certain calculations, and we said, well, actually, we can give you a virtual machine, access to a virtual machine that would do far better than that. They are happy, and the college has saved the cost of 2 of those Macs. So the returns are starting to come in. The research data management plans are being produced. and they are being checked at the Office of Research Services for compliance, but this process needs to be far more formal than it is. And research grant requests for high-performance computing are being referred to us so that we know what the demand is in like ARC or NHMRC grants before they get the grant. So future plans, we've got a lot here, and a lot of this is covered in the questions, so I won't go through them all, but a lot of it is process-based. It's the process that we need to access the RDR when more research data repository, when more requests come in. The establishment of a research committee, we'd like to talk to you guys about that as to how you think that should look and how that should operate. We need to continue the awareness raising, although that is going quite well. We really need to increase collaboration. We're a 6-campus university. Now, they're not miles apart like CQU or anything like that, but they are right across Western Sydney, and between any two, they can be up to 100 kilometres. So you really should have a good, robust collaboration tool. We use Confluence, but when I say use, the use could be a lot higher, but that's growing. We have 5 defined research institutes, which are concentrated research areas, and we need an eResearch strategy for those. We need infrastructure planning, project planning to leverage government funding, and expansion of our team as we need it. So all of this needs to happen. The big issue is funding for infrastructure and the relationship with IT, so that relationship can grow. In the end, my belief is that eResearch as a sort of subject should actually disappear. And I don't know how long that will take, but in the end, eResearch is just a methodology that we use in research. It should just be part of research. At the moment, it's special because we're trying to build it up. But in the end, it should disappear. It should become mainstream, and it should vanish into IT departments as part of what universities do. How we assist that to happen and how we make sure it works properly is, of course, one of the big questions. Okay, so effectively that's all from me, unless any of my team here want to make a comment or bring up an issue that I've missed out. What I'd like to do now is hand over actually to you. I'm happy to referee and time people and so on. We have focus questions, but before we need to get to those, I would really like to hear any stories that we have from other universities. You can comment on what I've said. I'm happy to answer questions, but I don't want to, as I said earlier, appear to be the person who knows the answers. So thank you. Any questions, comments, or otherwise? Or are we going to have an early mark? Yes, there are microphones, but if you can speak loudly.
I can speak fairly loudly. Just the eResearch policy or the practical procedures and guidelines. If you don't have a policy, it's really hard to develop any procedures and guidelines. So I really think you've got to work that out first, just like you've got your data management policy or whatever. You really need the policy at a high level, and then the procedures reflect that. That's my opinion.
No, that I'd agree with that. Is anybody? Sorry, yes.
I've got more of a question. What's the relationship of your group with the rest of the university?
It sits under me as Pro-Vice Chancellor Research, beside the Office of Research Services. Okay, so it is, and the relationship is that we have a link into IT services. That's through Andrew. And we confer with the library. In fact, one of our library people is here, Robin. And Yui's here somewhere, or I don't know if he's in the room, who's the library IT specialist. So we have those links as well. But basically, at the moment, it sits under me. Anybody else want to answer as to how that works within their institutions? Okay.
Yeah,
For sure.
I was just wondering, how much do you think you've mocked up demand from the research community that their IT facilitators are required to or are able to deliver, or when you think you've actually put something there that wasn't there before, and could have been there before without you screwing forward?
Okay. Actually, Andrew can probably answer that better than I can, but I will answer it and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Our IT shop was was really focused on the office part of the organisation. So they would do the servers, the SAN, the desktops, and it was Windows, no Macs, please. They were allowed, or at least they're more allowed now, but they're still not supported properly. So that was a really fine focus. Now, since then, we're trying to expand that. We've got a new director of IT. If you wanted anything done that was not in that mould, then you actually had to pay for it. Okay, so a research centre would say, oh God, you know, our Linux servers or Linux workstations need something or other done on it. Then they could find someone who could probably do it, right? But you'd have to pay, and it wasn't sure that you could find someone. So that was the point where I employed Andrew, who does all that sort of thing for researchers. In fact, he's specifically not to do the Windows desktop stuff because there are ITS people who do that. So that was a sort of, you know, a division of labour, if you like, and we're trying to, and with success, because we've got new staff and a new director, we are addressing that issue. Anyone else? Questions? What's happening in other universities? Silence was the stern reply, yes. No, you, that's right. No, sorry.
Peter Hitchens from University. So we have an eResearch support team with the Curtin IT Services. So it is a central IT group. It came out of a team that was focused on some of the, what we would call the non-commodity type support that we were already doing for science and engineering. And the challenge has been getting across other domains and focusing less on science and engineering. Because of our CIO having a very strong focus on deduplication, the eResearch team has needed to look at the value add above the infrastructure side of things, but looking at filling the gaps that exist. And we've worked closely with IVEC as well, certainly not to duplicate what IVEC are doing. So how do we leverage all the resources that are around the place? I went and spoke with a number of universities as we were setting up. Monash are an example, QUT and Griffith are another couple that we went to get an idea of how they were doing the support. And I think a big difference between us as we have it, and which I think we are moving toward, is the distinction between eResearch support as a function of IT or the library or whatever, and eResearch as the practice that researchers do. And I think that's a key thing. And so a group like Monash, where you actually have, University of Queensland, where you have eResearch embedded in academic areas, is a very useful model, and one that I'd like to see Curtin take up as well, so that you're actually getting that expertise of research practice with the people who are able to provide the infrastructure, soft and hard infrastructure support across the university. It is very much a team effort, like the Monash eResearch model shows, of library, ORD, faculty and IT services delivering eResearch. I quite like that model.
Yeah. Okay, I'd agree. Sorry, do you want to come?
UQ I didn't think their IT was that fantastic, but they've really tried to look at how they can support research. We've got 7 research institutes and I think 6 faculties, so we've got heaps and heaps of people. Anyway, what the new initiative is a research computing centre, so instead of having all of the people in the different research institutes all doing their own thing, what they've decided to do is have a centre where people from all of the different institutes all actually are in the same room, and so starting to try to get them all on the same page, because we're terribly decentralised, very big, and everyone sort of does their own thing. So trying to resolve the issue of people all going off and doing their own thing and reinventing wheels is to have everyone, at least in the same room, talking to each other and trying to develop a strategy that way. So it's coming on stream from the 1st of January, so it's not really started yet, but it's certainly been approved, and everyone's hoping this is going to take us forward.
Great. Just a couple of comments, perhaps even questions on that. That point of being decentralised, if you allow it organically to grow, then I think decentralisation is the way that it's going to happen, because centralisation doesn't really happen organically. And indeed, we had considerable computing or eResearch, although it wasn't called that, expertise in computing and engineering. They did all of their own support because there was no other external support. So in a way, I guess at Curtin, was it? You were saying that it started there, did I understand that correctly? And that you sort of amalgamated that into IT?
Yeah, so we had a decentralised IT support, so IT staff were embedded with the departments, and then we went through a centralisation process or a shared services process, to be politically correct, and ended up with one IT organisation with a focus on deduplication. So enterprise-wise, our mantra is deduplicate and push out the commodity, and where do we add value? And so eResearch was an area that was a major gap, and there still are significant gaps at Curtin around particular research groups. On the question, I guess, of targeting specific research groups, we have naturally worked with the groups who wanted to work with us, and there are some research groups who do not need anything that we can offer. We essentially make sure that their network is fast and then stay out of their way, and I think that is important as far as where we can add value and not just adding latency. There are some groups, and the humanities is an area, some of our researchers in the Faculty of Humanities, where we have actually added significant value around how do they look at the opportunities of using the infrastructure that's available. And so our ability, our skill in defining a business problem and coming up with a solution, but from the perspective of us not needing to provide the solution, of constructing a solution from what's on the landscape, has been useful for some of those groups.
So would you say, for example, you're just picking up on one of your comments there, that that you try to make sure that the network is fast and you don't add latency. Is there anything that you're doing with them to make sure that what they're doing is consistent or compliant? Are they running their own research data repositories, or are you going to put a central one in place?
In most of those cases, they are working with IVEC. And so whilst everything is not, from a compliance perspective, everything is perhaps not as tight as we would want it institutionally, it's a work in progress. And my own philosophy is if we can't offer anything better, then don't get in the way of what's being done at the moment. So we need to build our own capacity as an IT or as an eResearch support function to find where we add value. If we're not going in with the rule book and saying this isn't right, but we can't offer an alternative, is not a way to make friends or to bring about change.
This is true. So speaking of a rule book, do you have an eResearch policy?
Not an eResearch policy. We are, through the ANS project, developing our research data management policy. That has been for those who might have seen Salem talking earlier about the Curtin experience, has been a joint, it's led by Office of Research and Development, but it's something that my expertise, my team's expertise has been involved in helping create with the library. But very much it has to be sponsored by Office of Research and Development, those kinds of initiatives. Getting it onto the strategic radar, I think, is important. So not so much a policy, but making sure that it's involved in the planning and the discussions, that people are conscious of that that makes eResearch being the enhanced step change transformation of research practice.
Thanks. Just on, given that it was mentioned very early that there should be a strategy and policy in place, because without that you can't really develop procedures and guidelines, which is entirely true. Would anyone care to make any comments about the types of eResearch strategy policy that they have at their institution?
I'm just going to put a different view because it's money to executive guidelines. 2 to 3 years before we had a policy and procedure, and what that meant we could do was consult a lot more widely across the universities before we had a standard policy and procedure. And what that meant was when our policy went to academic board, everyone that had a comment or an issue or a problem with it had already had that data and it went through without any commentary. It also meant that we could actually identify what kinds of advice people really needed coming out of those guidelines, and we could work out upfront where the pain points in that policy and procedures were going to be. So just the kind of pain points. But
it was the good practices that the team researchers made into those guidelines.
Okay, so that, right. So, I mean, in a way, that sort of happens organically. We put in place a research data repository. People have to find out how to use it. They have to ask us, and that then becomes a sort of process. But we don't have a policy around it. And in fact, we don't even write the process. They just ask us because they can't get at it without asking. But they know it's there, if you understand that. So I guess that would be what you're talking about.
Yeah, but they're probably not going to use it unless someone else tells them to use it.
Yes.
So then the last one for us is the Soundworks project, or all of those things are labelled early adopters, all recognition audits. People who are interested in doing something at that time. Those people will really enjoy it. So people who have problems, sort of what you were talking about was almost enough to help them grab those guys.
Now, the good value issue, though, is something that comes up again and again and again, because like with the, I mentioned a request for 250 terabytes, they actually managed to reduce that significantly once they realised how much it was going to cost. But the point is that actually buying 100 disk drives from Dick Smith is a lot cheaper than getting it done properly in a research data repository. Of course, it's not backed up. Of course, they're going to fail. Of course, you're going to lose data, but the upfront cost is a lot less. So that has to be, that whole issue of price, value, and effect has to be balanced. So, sorry, there was a person down here. Anita.
No.
Sorry?
Yes.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. I'm interested in this policy and or guideline development of what people do. How many people have used AND projects or similar efforts to, I know that some AND projects have buildings and things like we're going to develop a data management plan. I don't know if it's going to be certain policies built into the probably not even certain. Has anybody successfully used that kind of external funding to drive these things?
We use that plan to actually get the experience and to understand it better. An example that Steve and I were recently working on was the reuse of data licensing. At the time, we're actually asking ANS for advice in the reuse of licensing, reuse of data. Unfortunately, ANS wasn't really ready to actually give us an answer, and so Sam and I basically had to find that out ourselves. But one thing, like Sam said, we wouldn't actually put in policy in this space to mature. It's probably more of understanding ourselves, provide these guidelines to others, or sharing that information, and then later on. Actually, it could be quite a contentious issue actually here in some groups when it comes to licensing data that can actually push a particular policy. And because researchers are part of not just an institute, but part of a larger community, you can actually cause contention there. So you also got to be very careful when you're applying this policies for researchers in this space.
No one else has sort of used those projects that
We've got a data management policy in draft form at the moment because that's what the code says you have to have. The code says institutions must develop a local policy, so we're developing one. But the policy is on a very high level, and the procedures and guidelines are on a very concrete level. But to some extent, it's hard to go concrete until you know what you're trying to do. But that's why I said, well, in terms of data management, we need to have a policy before we can tell people we've got to use X. But I mean, with eResearch policy, it might be a completely different ballgame. So, it just depends. Yeah. But our main driver was compliance code.
Just a very basic question. Where does eResearch emerge from basic function of what IT is or university research capability? But IT is there to provide hardware and software and services about this work. Where does that stop being their function, and where does research become a special need that covers that?
Well, in my opinion, it doesn't. But
I'm hearing.
I can tell you when it's advantage. We don't see ourselves as a service provider. We see ourselves as a capability partner, and
We don't provide, as I said, we don't provide services. That again is more of our central IT. The other thing is we see ourselves as a way of actually being an innovator in new eResearch applications. Our IT group does things in a very rigorous way. The idea of bringing up and supporting an application that is still immature and not used by everyone in the university or already has duplication is a very contentious issue in that part of the organisation. Therefore, it actually sits with our particular group to look after these sorts of things. So that's how we sort of sit with that.
I think the decentralisation will allow that to happen in the national reputation and something that would try to develop and it's like, well, let's just try and move that down.
Talking about
and in, sorry.
I'm trying to understand that I'm hearing it conflicting. One minute I think I grasp, the next thing is tracking it. So you're going to, and that's the technical. No doubt is what we call, no doubt is providing, servers and desktops. No doubt all that new. But eResearch is about developing tools as well, about developing new tools, so that you can do different things about visualizing the knowledge.
Yeah.
And once that was caught up in tiny little groups, and then they were going wild, running meetings, like, can you tell us some photographs?
Yeah, well, I think what you tried to explain actually is really that the eResearch team, and I think you put that very well, it's not a service provider. It's IT that is the service provider. The eResearch team actually, by and large, acts as an interface between researchers who need to do their research, and they need different tools to what the normal academics.
So let me sort of tell you a bit of a story as well. Research, if you have a researcher and they go to a central conventional IT group at the university, they'll ask for this, and they'll go, oh, okay, but it's only for you, it's not for the whole enterprise. Or it's already a function that's provided by another service. But because that isn't a cultural fit, your research as a part of the community is more larger than the university. But if the university imposes solutions that are only for the university, that can actually isolate the researchers from their colleagues. So you have to have that ability to sometimes provide different solutions, and also providing that bridge between the two different cultures, and they are very different. One side is very analytical, the other side is very ambiguous, and works in a very interpretive mode. You need a group like this that can actually join them together.
One of the things that you have to remember is that you're also trying to build solutions for researchers who actually don't know what the solutions are. Okay, so particularly, and I don't want to be disparaging here, but in the humanities, they are using now an amazing amount of IT. In fact, they even use high-performance computing, or just higher performance computing, when they're doing their textual analyses and so on. But they absolutely aren't interested in the computing aspects of it. They absolutely just want to do what they want to do. And so that interface having an eResearch analyst team that can talk to these people, interpret what their needs are, and then build it or get it built is vital. And I think that is that's sort of where eResearch grows. And also, you mustn't forget the other aspects of eResearch, which is the library, because I saw a sort of research life cycle diagram. It was produced by JISC. It's a wonderful diagram. If you put it up, so do you remember the? I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember the spaghetti and meatballs diagram that one of our politicians did once when he was trying to explain something, and he was absolutely derided. But it looks a bit like that. But effectively, you start off. In eResearch now goes all the way around the cycle. You start off by looking for publications electronically. You analyse the publications. You come with an idea. You submit your grant application electronically. It gets reviewed electronically. You get the money. It's transferred electronically, and you then start to do the work. But most of this is all done using IT. You might do your experiments. You gather the data electronically. It's all streamed into databases. You analyse it. You build your own tools, or you get the tools built. You publish, often electronically, and now, of course, you publish the data. So the data gets published. That's electronic. So this whole cycle goes round, and now you can start at the
Sure. Because it's which I can find things about the research. But there's left in the community relations is the kind of inclusive environment, and this is the environment basically now basically based on the need to advance as well as the emerging we don't have the disconnect between library and discussion on very important.
Sorry, just to pick up on some of these, ITS as an organisation is just a label group. So, certainly my experience is that I'm part of it. But I'm not part of that, and so part of my role has actually been to make that separation of what is the core business and keeping stuff running versus the value add. And so if you carve it in an awkward way, you end up being back to what do people rather looking for research, having a sort of relationship with the research. And in case of staff in my group, being involved as part of research. It's almost like what is in a way multidisciplinary research, but even information and communication technology or communication level. Researchers bring their own library and data management and information, and we all work together.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something I want to get that one. The principle.
Well, entirely strikes me as that's the way it's got to be. There is no other way forward. You can't separate. Yeah.
I can't see that parallel between librarians and ICT. I come from an ICT background, but it strikes me that the humanities in the library have got the subject librarian, as opposed to the generic shelf stacker, is seen as quite a big guy in humanities. People go and consult them all the time. Maybe not so much in the science service, whereas when you go to the science service, it's the IT people you don't talk to, because they are basically asking you what service you want, put into a catalog, why you want, and then say, well, we're going to support that, or there's something going on. They aren't engaging so much with their research community, their science research community, that the focus does, in the same way that the humanities librarians have over the years created there for the social science.
Yeah, I think you'll find that actually depends on on the discipline to a large extent. As a physicist, I happen to know that we think that we can do all of our own IT. But, for example, the biologists aren't or weren't, as competent with the IT, and so they would tend to go to IT to get solutions. Now, it's not the case anymore, because IT is more complex. Sorry, you were...
I was just going to say about your point. I do think that people do themselves as humanities librarians. I think humanity, have a lot of librarians, so I know about this. The key now is to get those humanities people introduced to humanities, and that's the struggle I've had with some of my training is that the librarians and humanities think, oh, they don't have any data. Well, of course they do. And one of the messages I think we should take away today is how to get the message out. And one of the key ways I've got about to IRC is I've gone to say humanities seminars, and I've shown them things like whole value online, or the Benson Code, or the Civil War transcription records, or just some very fascinating traders, a whole Bible you can get online that's, free, you've never seen it before, or just some of the fantastic digitization or digital humanities projects that are out there. And I think to show people the possibilities, then they rapidly jump on board. And I think it's really important to get the message out. Now, it's a bit different in the sciences, but there are great things in the sciences. Even the crowdsourcing sort of stuff you can do, like Galaxy 2 or some of the stuff around climate change. It's just a matter of showing them projects that are really exciting, and then they really want to get interested. And, something like the British Library exhibitions are another sort of really good way of getting what is research out to people who really want to go there.
And the National Library Trove thing I get completely absorbed in that. I have to avoid that
Go
one.
in there and never come back.
Exactly, yes. Over there was, yes.
Yeah. I actually work for eResearch. I have the benefit of seeing a whole bunch of customers, not just eResearch. And the challenges which you are articulating there, the aligning business process, business outcome to IT is not unique to your sector. One of the oldest challenges. And so I sort of think my point is going to make around digitalization. And I'm doing first comment together. The digitalization is really, there's no point having an IT person in the department of whatever, installing servers, backing them up, installing operating systems. It's just great. That's something you can do at scale, drive down the cost. You don't need 20 data centers on a campus. And there are a lot of expertise to get that right. Let's build one, scale it, and leverage that. The important thing is, okay, so that you take out those skills away from them. Those IT resources then become your resources. They're the ones who are not asking questions, how can I serve more efficiently? They're asking the researchers, what business problems do you have? And they go, I'm trying to look for ways, sending documents around the world. Oh, well, have you had to do this before email? Oh, no, I never have. That's brilliant. Thank you. You solved my problem. Could go down, of course, but enjoying that I'm trying to get this done in my research world with the IT. And I guess, for me, that's what eResearch is. Basically, the business model mapping to IT, but essential IT is duplication, grows up and scale.
Right, well, I'm conscious, thank you, that we've come to the end of our time allocation. We're lucky in that we've got the last session, so we can go on forever. But I think we should call it a day. I'd like to thank you all for your input. There was actually one person who wanted to say something, but we'll just have to leave it. Okay, so thanks everyone. We're actually going to write some notes up on this, so if you want a copy, do email me or write your name down somewhere. And we'll see what we can do. We can send them out to you, completely de-identified, of course.
Put it on your blog, Andrew.
Put it on my blog. Oh, right, yes. Okay. So thanks very much, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.